Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Uranus in the first house. The first house is the house of the self, and the ascendant is the cusp of the first house. And we look at the sign on the ascendant to give us some understanding of a person's appearance, the way that they dress, the first house itself, but even with that sign on the ascendant, we can look at the demeanor of the person, the type of impression they make on others. And so planets that reside in the first house can also give some of these influences in terms of how the self is expressed and also perceived by others. So Uranus is the disruptor. It's the planet that rules Aquarius. And as many people know, Aquarius is the sign of the eccentric. So suffice it to say, if you have Uranus in the first house, you are probably going to be seen as different in some way. And definitely eccentric can come to mind. And the first thing I just want to say is see how many degrees Uranus is from your ascendant. If it's within 10 degrees, it can really affect the appearance, and you may favor unusual style of dress. What I was thinking about is I'm trying to think like when I would see this, like what decade, but I would see women or like teenage girls who would wear clothes like, let's say, from the 50s, but in the 80s or something like that. And it's just like doing things that are wearing plaid and stripes, or I know that's kind of silly, but there are people who have the most unusual styles, but sometimes they can really make it work. And one of the things about this placement is that it makes you ahead of your time. So when you think about fashion, the people that really are the innovators, and that's another key word for Uranus is innovation, are the people who are not just riding a trend or, anything like that, but they're making it. They're the on the forefront. So certainly, and sometimes I remember, like when I was in high school, there would be people that would be wearing things that I never saw anybody else wear, but it might have been some kind of underground fashion. So even though they might not have invented that style, they were kind of on that, they were riding that early wave. And that's how you are, in one way or the other. But the reason some of you might say, well, that's so superficial. That's just like the way somebody dresses and stuff like that. But that's what the first house is about. The first house isn't your true self. It's what other people are picking up on, first and foremost. And in terms of your own view towards yourself, this can be how you put yourself out there. So it is coming from you. It's not just coming from the outside world, but that's part of it. It can be your body. And speaking of that, you may have very unpredictable or erratic movements in the way that you kind of, carry yourself. Herky-jerky maybe, or you have to be careful about being unpredictable in your movements, because it can lead to, putting yourself in situations where, if you're not careful, you might be accident prone. So you have to self-regulate more to avoid things like that. Because I didn't see this in the information that I was collecting, but I remember Uranus ruling the nervous system. And I'm trying to find where I got, I compiled this list from advancedastrology.com. This has been such a helpful resource for being able to discuss these key points. And they had said something about this kind of way that the person moves, and I can't find it right now. But yeah, it was something along those lines of being very, sudden in your, in the way that you move. And that can, have challenges if you're not careful. Now, it's important for me to say that a few of these things I'm putting on my own, so I don't want to just attribute it to that all the way. So I put here, that it rules the nervous system and makes you keyed up. And this is one of those things where you may give off this energy like you're a power station. One of the things that's interesting when you start to look at the chart when you start to get involved in astrology, you can see so many different influences that come out in a similar way. So Uranus in the first house, especially if it's in conjunction with the Ascendant, can be like Aquarius Rising. I have the moon in conjunction with Uranus, so that's like having the moon in Aquarius. And I mean, sometimes I'm like, I've dropped things in stores and glass breaks all around me. And you could say, well, whoa, what a klutz, that person is. But it almost feels like, vibing so strongly, like a live wire. So you may have that as well. I think some of these things do have things in common. I was seeing myself in this, and I don't have this position. Freedom of self-expression and authenticity are very important to you. And one of the things that they mentioned was the idea of having to wear a uniform, like for your job or something like that. And I immediately thought about, in my situation, even though I don't have that exact same thing of working retail and having to wear a name tag, and how I refuse to wear a name tag. And I was just thinking while I was compiling this list of like, gosh, that's so silly of me. Why did I overreact that way? Well, I think if I were still in that position, I would still resist that, because I think that in my case, I felt like it was like we were being branded or something, like we were just like these objects of the company. And so that might be how you feel as well if you're in that position, that conformity. And I put down here like corporate jobs, and a lot of times we hear on the news about somebody either suing or bringing to the public's attention that they are not allowed to wear a certain hairstyle. You are somebody who is free-spirited, but there's also a willful part in that, where you you have a very strong will, and that can lead to stubbornness. I don't know if they are directly linking that to Aquarius, because the sign that Uranus rules is Aquarius, and that is a fixed sign. So maybe that has something to do with why they're saying that. But so you might stick to your guns about these things. If Uranus is well aspected, this can be a healthy thing where, you're just very unique, and your way of thinking it's refreshing, and you have an unusual but well received form of self-expression. But when there are adverse aspects, it can mean that you are a rebel without a cause, like Marlon Brando in that movie, and said, what are you rebelling against? And he said, what do you got? It's just, there's nothing really, you're not doing something purposefully, if that's a word, with a sense of purposefulness, with a sense of purpose. One thing that you can't stand is somebody imposing their will on you. And it might not take much for you to feel that somebody's doing that. You might accuse them or think that they're doing it if they just ask you to do something. I mean, that's always a possibility. So you have to make those adjustments so that you're not just balking at anything that somebody says simply because you don't like that, you overreact and think that your freedom is constantly being threatened. So let's see if I missed anything here. I think I covered just about everything that I wanted to say. I don't know if I said these ones, that you're ahead of your time, tuned into technology, and an innovator. You might have been the first one with a cell phone, or the first one who had a home computer back in the day. That's just part of who you are. People may perceive you as intelligent, maybe even a genius in your own way. So that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.